everybody and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new. Today I'm just going to be giving you guys my top 10 tips on earning your medical assisting credential. Before I took my credentialing exam back in September of 2019, I came on here looking for videos similar to this one, but didn't find very many, and the ones I found I did not find helpful. And I know a bunch of you guys are in the medical assisting field as well and may benefit from these tips. Keep in mind, these are just my personal tips, and the tips you have for someone else may be different. If you do have tips for others, definitely leave them in the comments down below so everyone can read through them. But these are the 10 things that I wish I had known before taking my credentialing exam, as well as things that have helped me. For those of you who do not know, I am a certified medical assistant, or a CMA, through the American Association for Medical Assistants, or AAMA, and I actually have a bunch of different videos related to medical assisting that I will leave in a playlist down below, 4 of which are all about becoming a credentialed medical assistant. There's a video on the difference between an RMA and a CMA, a video on how I made my decision on what exam I was going to take, a bunch of videos on how I studied, which if you guys would like an entire video on all the combined materials that I studied, definitely let me know because I can do that. I did kind of a really short version in my how I'm studying and taking notes video, but if you guys would like, I can go more in depth and show absolutely everything I use, such as flashcards, things I printed off and laminated, and everything like that. So if that would be of interest to you, let me know down below. And if I have any links for you guys, I will leave them in the description box in case there is an item you are interested in purchasing or a website you are interested in visiting. And without further ado, let's get started. So my first tip for you guys is to choose the exam that you want to take and not the exam that others are telling you to take or that everyone else around you is taking. Just because everyone's taking the RMA exam through the AMT doesn't mean you have to follow, especially if you are someone who wants to be a CMA through the AAMA. Do not let others influence you. This is your credential and it should be the one that you want, so that down the road you're not like, oh, I wish I had taken the CMA exam instead of the RMA exam. And just because everyone else is taking one specific exam doesn't mean you have to follow along with them just to be grouped with them. I know that for me personally, 3/4 of my class did the RMA exam through the AMT, whereas me and a few others took the CMA exam through the AAMA. This is also sort of an additional tip that I just thought of that I will just slide right into here because it kind of pertains to that, but it is, if you are confused about the exams or you just can't decide which one to take, go on and do some research. Create a pros and cons list of the pros of being in this one and the cons of being in this one, or the pros of being in this one and the cons of being in this one, and weigh it out. I also recommend doing a job search of your area to see which credential companies are requiring you to have or would prefer you to have. When it comes down to this, I don't think there are very many companies who are really strict on which credential you have as long as you have a credential. However, there are some companies that will only hire you if you have one credential or the other, but that doesn't necessarily mean that if you're an RMA you won't get a job listed for a CMA, which is why I recommend doing a basic job search. And if there's a company you have a big interest in working for and you don't know if they prefer one credential or the other, all you have to do is reach out to their hiring board, and I'm sure there is someone there who can answer your question. Tip number 3 is to compile all your study materials based on the credentialing exam outline. I'm not sure if every credentialing site offers an outline for what's going to be on their exam, but I know that the AAMA does. It's right on their website and will be linked down below for you guys. But by printing that off, you know what information to expect on the exam, and I just recommend compiling an entire binder with information related to each of the topics on the outline. Again, if you'd like a video all about that, let me know, because that is exactly what I did. I have an entire binder that I compiled together based off of the outline, and definitely have a more heavy focus on topics that you really struggled with. For me, it was the admin section. Even through school, I struggled with the admin section. I don't know why, but I did. So I did a lot of heavy studying on that topic because I knew that it would be a good portion of the credentialing exam, and I wanted to try and know all that I could. And in terms of compiling things and keeping it all together, I literally filled up an entire Sterilite bin with diagrams I had printed off, things I had laminated, my notes, my binder. I made probably close to 400 or 600 flashcards. Again, if you would like to see all of this as a more in-depth video, definitely let me know. Tip number 4 is to study for at least a few months. I know that there are people out there who don't need to study at all and people who can study pretty quickly and still pass. I was not that way, let me tell you. So I started my program in September of 2018, and right away we learned about the different credentials, and while we did not need to know which credential exam we wanted to take at that time, I picked right away that I wanted to be a CMA. It was just my personal preference, and so then in December of 2018 I began studying, and I began with studying the materials that we had gone over in class already in accordance to the outline, and I wouldn't study a ton, but I would definitely dedicate an hour or two to studying each week. But then once June of 2019 came around, I started studying really hard and making it a priority to study at least an hour every day, if not more. I am someone who definitely has to study in order to pass things, and other than completing my student externship over the summer of 2019, studying was my main priority. And if you feel overwhelmed with the amount of materials you have to study with, break them down into smaller sections and dedicate certain days to tackle certain topics. If you are super overwhelmed with everything, you are not going to be able to focus or retain the information, so you are better off breaking all the big things into smaller categories and topics. Tip number 5 is a really important one, and it is, if you do not feel prepared as you get close to your exam date, then reschedule your exam as long as it's within your testing window. I think you get a 3 to 4 month testing window, at least you do with the CMA exam, and when you first schedule your exam and pick your date, they will usually have a date under it that will tell you the last date you can cancel and reschedule the exam without paying a fee. So I highly recommend making note of that in your planner or on your calendar or whatever you use, and I would mark the exact date that you can reschedule with without being penalized, as well as a few days before, just in case you do get to that point and don't feel ready. I had a 3-month testing window starting September 1st of 2019, and I really just wanted to get my exam done, so I chose September 9th, 2019 as my test date, and as I got closer, I did not feel ready, so I went on and I rescheduled my exam and took it 11 days later on September 20th, and at that point I did feel ready. So do not be afraid to reschedule if you are allowed to, because if you don't feel ready, then chances are you will not pass, and you are better off giving yourself an extra week or two to study. Tip number 6 is to reach out to other medical assistants that you know if you have simple questions. During off times, during my externship, such as at lunch or at the very end of the day when we were all going home, if I had questions, I made sure to speak up and ask them, and 9 times out of 10, the medical assistants are going to be more than happy to help you and answer your questions. If there is something specific you guys are stumped on, you can also feel free to DM me on Instagram and I will do my best to answer it. I also think that speaking up and asking questions to other medical assistants shows that you have a deep interest in the profession and that you are trying to get as much knowledge as you possibly can. Tip number 7 is to not study the day of your exam. Let me repeat that. Do not study the day of your exam, and don't cram the day before your exam. Again, I'm repeating this. Don't cram the day before your exam. When you cram before an exam, the only information you really retain is snippets from here, there, and everywhere of the things you're just simply looking at, and you do not retain the knowledge. So in the long term, you end up forgetting a ton of information that is vital, and cramming just is not worth it, which is why dedicating certain days to certain things is so important. If you spend an adequate amount of time studying, you should not need to cram. I was always told if you cram, you fail the exam. I can't remember where I first heard it, but I think I learned it back in high school, and I still use it to this very day. Tip number 8 is, if you are struggling on a question on the actual exam, keep moving forward and come back to it. Make a simple note of it. A lot of the times on the computer, you can actually flag the question to go back to at another time. These exams are timed, and if you spend a huge chunk of time on one simple question that is stumping you and you keep second guessing yourself and you just cannot figure it out, you are missing out on questions that you could be getting right and getting points for. You are not penalized whatsoever for skipping a question and are better off skipping it if you do not know it. When you are taking the exam, you have to use your time very wisely and always be checking that timer. And I told myself if I was spending more than 3 minutes on a question, I needed to move on and come back to it after I had answered all the questions I knew I could, so that I could earn points to questions that I 100% knew the answers to. The last thing you want is to be stuck on one question and then have your exam time out and you're sitting there like, why did I keep staring at that question when I know I didn't know the answer? Tip number number 9 is a really important one to keep in mind, and that is to not give up if you don't pass the exam. It is not the end of the world if you don't pass the exam the first time or the second time. Most exams have a cap as to how many times you can take it, and if you hit that cap and still haven't passed it, don't give up. Move on to another credentialing exam. So say you failed the CMA exam multiple times and you capped out at the amount of times you could take it, move on to something like the RMA exam or the CCMA exam, because one of those may be easier and better suited for you. Just do not give up. It is not worth giving up everything you've worked for in order to get a credential just because you fail the exam. Failing the exam doesn't mean you're stupid either. And it doesn't mean you didn't study or anything like that. It doesn't mean you didn't know the information. Not everyone's a good test taker. Some tests are way harder than others. I know that the CMA exam is known as one of the tougher exams because of the content on it. And tip number 10, my final tip for you guys is once you earn your credential, throw that around like confetti. Make sure you tell the whole world that you are a credentialed medical assistant. Post it on every social media possible. When you see people, be like, hey, I'm a credentialed medical assistant. I'm a CMA through the AMA. Throw it around like confetti. Earning your credential is such a huge achievement and something you should be proud of, and is something you should share with the whole world. It doesn't matter if you're bragging about it in any way, shape, or form. You worked hard to earn this credential, and you should be able to show it off, and you should want to show it off as well. When I sign things professionally, I always put my signature and then comma CMA parentheses AMA. So it is known that I am a credentialed medical assistant. Earning a credential takes a lot of time, dedication, and is super challenging. And it is such a reward when you pass and have that credential. I was so proud of myself. I literally posted about it everywhere. I was so proud of myself, as you should be. So that is my last and final tip. Throw your credential around like confetti. So those are just 10 of my tips for you guys. I really hope you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions or other suggestions, leave them in the comments for others to read. And if you have questions, I will do my best to answer them. Be sure to check out all my other medical assisting related videos in the playlist linked down below. While you guys are down there, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I upload new content regularly and would love it if you'd become part of our little family. And be sure to hit the bell so that you are notified every time I do upload a new video. I hope you guys like this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye guys!